Godzilla. He's all the rage right now. Godzilla got a trailer coming out for Godzilla times Kong. Him and Kong teaming up. You got the Godzilla minus one film that just came out, and you haven't seen that, have you?
Not yet. I'm very much looking forward to getting.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. So highly recommend checking it out. Godzilla minus one. I think it's a fantastic film. And that made me decide to put up a poll of which Godzilla movies should we go back and review. And I haven't really watched many Godzilla movies. I've seen the recent ones, Godzilla 2014, which a lot of people seem to, since the trailer premiered of Godzilla Time Kong. You see some people going like, this gotten too goofy or too silly, and it's like people like the 2014 one, and then so I've seen that one. I've seen also Godzilla versus Kong. I still want to see Shin Godzilla. I bought it on Blu-ray. I've been meaning to watch it. I heard that's also really
Mm.
fantastic and for a lot of people up there. But when we put up the poll there, we had one of this Godzilla 1954, and this was what won the poll. And it was interesting going back to the OG Godzilla, the black and white Godzilla, where you see clearly the models here that you have of Godzilla stomping around, crushing things, guy in a rubber suit. Just absolutely fantastic. And this trailer, I think it's more from the 1956 version here because you see Raymond Burr there.
Yeah,
That was
especially with all the subtitles there.
yeah. But yeah, so I watched the Japanese version there on HBO Max. They actually have all the Godzilla films up there, which is pretty nice. You can go check it out on the Max there. Watch them before they just remove them, so you better hurry up.
Right.
Um, and check that out. But of course, and hello there, Cat Name Women. Good to see you. Very much appreciate you stopping by here. But yes, and Godzilla, 1954 film, very much like people have always talked about, and I've heard this many times over. A movie in reference to the atom bomb, and very much an allegory for that. And when you actually see this movie, I thought like coming into it, I was like, well, it's probably going to be pretty subtle, the messaging of the atom bomb and nuclear warfare. But no, it actually isn't very subtle at all. I mean, they actually reference it quite a bit. They reference the H bomb, the hydrogen bomb here, and then that's the reason that Godzilla they believe actually exists because of the hydrogen bomb testing that they're doing in the ocean, and that's how what made Godzilla the creature that he is. Um, but, when you actually this is a good pairing movie to watch Godzilla minus one and then to watch this back to back because there's very a lot of similarities to the two. It's almost like Godzilla minus one. I guess it's basically almost like a remake in a way, in a sense of this film. Give me some of your thoughts on Godzilla 1954.
Yeah. Well, so this is a movie I don't think I'd seen this in at least 10 years, and I think the last time I watched it, I did watch that American re-release from 1956, which really kind of does a lot of small things to try and make it like almost a more exciting like monster movie. But one thing I really appreciate about this film, and going back and watching it again, it really kind of settles in being dour about it. It's something that kind of strikes out immediately to me is the sound design and the footprints. They almost don't sound like the landfall of footprints. It almost sounds like bombs going every time that you start to hear that come up. And I have the composer's name here. Yeah, Akira Fukabe. I could be saying that wrong. Don't judge me too harshly. But he uses the sound in such an interesting way, and I think there's this, you know, old effects, right? Old costume. You could maybe expect it to be a little goofy, but I think this holds up in a way because it captures this just dread-filled tone kind of throughout the whole thing. Like I would classify this almost more as a horror movie than a monster movie, even though it is, of course, very much a monster film.
Mm, yeah. And this is the official Japanese trailer right here. And like I said, I mean, and thank you by the way, Catney Winnie. Thank you for the subscription there. Very much appreciated there. Much love there. But yes, you kinda see that here, kinda with the horror aspect here of people, running away from Godzilla, him just destroying these entire towns, him with the, atomic breath that he has. Now it's, kinda nothing compared to what you see now where he, like, does the whole charge up there and then the big blast and you know what I mean? It's like that, now with better effects, you can see that, here. But, that's still much very effective. The roar is still very much you hear it and still in modern day. You mentioned the score. You have the iconic, Godzilla theme there that you have there with the opening of this film. Yeah, I'm not going to really play it because, of course, YouTube. I'm going to upload this.
Right.
Yeah, play 2 seconds of that and then you strike down there. But you have that very much, in this movie, which is all very iconic, and you see why it was kind of the success it was there. Um, and yeah, I mean, and when you mentioned of how, political this movie is, having a character of like the doctor character, who is probably for me one of the most fascinating characters in the movie. And that's the guy with the eye patch here. Um,
Yeah, as Daisuke Serizawa. Yeah.
okay, I bet you said that a lot better than I would have said it. Uh, and yeah, you have this who, because of course, like many Godzilla movies, when he first appears, there's the immediate human response of how are we going to take Godzilla out? How are we going to fight this thing? And the scientist, this doctor, comes up with an idea of, what I mean, stripping the oxygen, basically like this oxygen destroyer from the ocean. So when they drown, Godzilla, they're gonna kill him. By the way, spoiler for a 69-year-old movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so they're gonna that's the basically plan. But you see him kind of almost like kind of like a figure like J. Robert Oppenheimer, where he's kind of battling of like having this weapon here of like, well, if I create this weapon, even if it is to stop this dangerous creature, what if other people get their hands on it? Other human beings get their hand what disaster will that lead to? So I thought that was kind of very fascinating there. And then especially the ending of the movie here, where the character you just have the older guy in the movie who just basically just sitting there going like, if there's more nuclear war, then it's going to lead to another Godzilla there. Kind of leading to again, the arms race, nuclear, arms race there at that time. You know, after the atom bomb was first dropped and what that with the constant escalation that would kinda lead to in warfare there. So yeah, what's kinda some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree about the doctor being. I personally think the most interesting character in the movie, and I think part of part of what I think makes the movie work so well, despite maybe some dated special effects in certain places, is that the Godzilla is like a monster, you know, destroying things. That's a relatively small portion of the overall film. I think the real crux here is his battle over the ethics of whether or not to introduce that weapon to the world, because he spends most of the movie already having developed it and being reluctant to use it. Like it's actually pretty what 20 maybe 30 minutes in, he's got this thing like that this is
Mm,
already made this weapon. Um and it takes people manipulating him, lying, leaking information to other people, and people begging him to use it, and ultimately he destroys his own research, even though he agrees to use it this once, just in an attempt to make sure that this is like a one and done sort of situation. And yeah, I love the messaging there, and it does. It's funny having Oppenheimer having come out earlier this year, because it's totally tackling some of the same subjects. Although the Serizawa character being, kind of nobly taking his own life just to prevent this weapon from existing in the world. Certainly a more fictionally like satisfying conclusion. But I also really appreciate that at the end of this movie, there's no celebration, right? Like there's no like momentous "yay, we did it" at the end. It is kind of ends on a very sad, very, very dour feeling. And it just kind of lets you sit with it. And I really love how it handles it.
mm, yeah, because they mentioned the doctor sacrificed his life to stop Godzilla here, and there's a very somber kinda tone, at the end of this film. What did you, go into some of the effects here, did you kinda find them charming a little bit, like the models here?
I
Um
actually do, yeah.
Okay. And this is like the big scene here where you see Godzilla. We see him kind of take on the city here and kind of stomping through it because they try to set a trap for him. You know what I mean? Corner him here, and he's just mowing down all their military here, as you see. Yeah, I found it also kind of charming as well. You know what I mean? Even though now it's incredibly dated now, and like one was kind of I thought was kind of a little comical. Was there's a scene where they have reporters there, and he's in the tower, and he's dedicated to his job. He's trying to get reporter of the year because he's up there, chronicling everything that's going on. It's Godzilla. He's coming towards me, and then he's not trying to get the hell out of here. The cameraman's not trying to get out of there. They just stayed all the way to the end, and Godzilla just kills them there. Just takes down the tower. I was like, wow, that's dedication. And then you clearly see kind of the models here of the little town, like back out. They still kind of do it somewhat in the filmmaking, like the model kind of characters you'll see of like buildings and things like that, but probably not as much as they used to. Very much
I
not
think
as
the
much.
last time that was like used in a really, really significant way was the Lord of the Rings, I think.
Lord of the Rings, yeah, probably, when they kinda did that. Now everything is, just like CGI, we're gonna just CGI, but there also is some kinda good craft work to see, like, people who worked on this, designed this, took time to do this, and I very much appreciate it a lot. Besides for the doctor, character, what'd you think about some of the other characters that you kinda have in this film?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the conversations that they have, whether it's just kind of some of the smaller personal human conversations, or even the you get these big public meetings, and some of it is a bit of lore exposition dumpy. But I do really appreciate the depth in which they try and talk about it. I mean, do they let the public know? What is the plan? Is this going to freak people out? Do we tell them that we like how much do we tell them? Do we tell them to go to shelter in place? Kind of exploring all of the options of like a disaster scenario. And I was again trying to pull it was a Yamane, I think was the official that comes in and is the older gentleman that's got the like big suit and tie, and he's the kind of the main one giving the information dumps. Unless I believe I have that correct.
Right, you talking
Um,
about, the older kinda guy with the kinda mustache?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Was it? Oh no, sorry, that wrong name. Professor Tanabe. Is that right?
okay, and that was the older guy with the mustache there? Let me
I
see if I
believe so.
let me see, I think I got an image of him,
I may have that.
let's see here. Yeah, I think you're talking about this character right here. Yeah, guy to
Yes,
the right.
yes.
Yep, yeah, yeah. And very much so. I mean, it's with his character, with this, bringing back a little bit to Godzilla minus one. As I mentioned, it had so much Spielberg influences there, Star Wars kind of influences, and then going all the way to this one, 1954. Is you can see kind of where maybe Spielberg got some of the inspiration for Jaws, for this with this film, because the character here that you mentioned, very much he's the older guy coming in to basically it's an info dump and to talk about the horrors of Godzilla and like he's again being that person who's seen the war, he's seen the traumatic effects of a creature like this before, in various different forms. You know what I mean? Because I mean they like I said they should have mentioned what I mean things like the hydrogen bomb, things like the damage that bombs have done to nuclear war there. So I think that character there to kind of be this point of kind of remembrance of that past horror there. I thought was really good.
And
Um,
I believe it's his daughter and her soon-to-be fiance that are they're the ones that actually go in and then have to convince Sarazawa to allow the use of the weapon in the first place. I think.
yes, yes, it is. Yeah. So again, I think that's a great scene where the doctor he's burning his research here, all the things that he's done. And like you said, he figures it out pretty soon there into the movie. And this movie's not that long either. It's only an hour and 30 something minutes. It's not that long of a film either. I think that after the initial kind of the big scene, kind of when Godzilla kind of takes the city, does all this destruction. I think it kind of does pace wise, kind of slows down a lot there. How did you kind of feel about that? If you know what I'm referencing.
Yeah, no, it does slow down a little bit. You could almost looking at it now in a modern context. I feel like you could maybe shave like 10 minutes off. There's a lot of at times in the movie. Uh, it's I don't want to say wandering, but it does feel like it's taking its time, and so some of that's just a thing with a lot of older films. They just take their time with establishing shots and kind of build up in certain scenes that don't always feel super necessary. But it didn't drag like a lot because, as you said, it's not a long movie. I did really appreciate seeing a lot of just talking about the human element of the movie, seeing so much of the aftermath destruction of just the people that you don't know the names of, right? And kind of just seeing how badly people are killed and injured. There's a moment where they're examining people in like a medical tent or medical building after one of the attacks, and there's a little girl that's just bawling her eyes out. Okay, cat's knocking stuff over. There's a little girl bawling her eyes out, and I thought when I saw that has got to be some of the best child act. Like they must have actually like told that little girl her mom died in like a real explosion to get her to cry like that. Like that was some of the best child acting I've ever seen.
Yeah. One scene that's coming up in mind for me, I remember. See if you remember this scene that I thought was really good. It was with a mother, and she was holding her
Oh
children.
yes.
もう、お父ちゃまのそばへ行くのよ。ねえ、もうすぐ、もうすぐ、お父ちゃまのところへ行くの。
Just just the fact that she's just completely kind of helpless there. You know what I mean? What this creature just kind of attacks there, is was absolutely kind of devastating. I think. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I thought that that was I thought those really good, kind of showing like the people kind of running from it. Again, that's always been a kind of a present thing in a lot of the Godzilla movies. Seeing kind of even if kind of all that destruction it's causing in the aftermath of it. Um, Later on, 'cause I mean, how many Godzilla movies have you, seen? Uh,
I would put it somewhere between 10 and 15, but definitely not all of them.
okay. And do you kinda you take Godzilla, the Goofy where he had, like, a kid and when he was doing, like, a super jumps and when he was kinda teaming
Yeah,
up, like yeah.
totally. I mean, I enjoy Goofy Godzilla and Serious Godzilla. It's funny to look at this movie and see how it can be devastating, as you say, horrifying. When you look at it within the context of the nuclear experiment that it's clearly predicating itself on, and then to think that it evolved into some of the things it does. I mean, you go 20 years later and you see some of these. Yeah, this is exactly the one I was thinking of too.
Yeah, and then it goes
There's
into
a yeah, it's just and then the cut and then the sideways swing, and there's a moment in that same movie too where Godzilla and the robot are surrounded by like a ring of fire, and Godzilla's like waving him like "Get out of here, man!" And the robot comes back. He's like, "We're getting out of here together." Not at all right. And he's like carrying him through the fire, and yeah, it's I enjoy both, but I do think it is something like this original film does, I think, it carries so much meaning that it's funny to think that it went into such a goofy direction.
Yeah. House of says Druid says comedy and tragedy are thought to be two sides of the same coin. Godzilla really embodies that.
Oh, that is Tim right there, actually.
Oh, Tim, hey, how's it going there, Tim? Good for you to be here, man. So yeah, I think Godzilla really definitely does embody that there. And you'll see like this movie coming out later. You're gonna see Godzilla. Hell yeah, he's gonna kick some ass. That got him and
That's
Kong.
so
You know what I mean?
goofy looking.
Um, as good, people
Oh
saying
man.
that Godzilla doesn't run. People were complaining about that. He said he doesn't run there.
Like he shouldn't be running, and like they're mad that they had him run in the track. That's
Yeah.
such a nitpick. I don't. All right.
Yeah. But yeah. So for Godzilla 1954, what are your final thoughts? What are your rating for?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of. it's such a foundational piece of filmmaking. Like there are things about it that it's not necessarily my favorite. It does slow down a little bit in pacing at times. I totally agree with you about that. Some of the effects can feel a little dated, although I do think they're charming. There is a one shot where he looks like straight into the camera, and I swear he's cross-eyed. He's just looking in opposite directions. That got a laugh out of me. But the message in theme of the film, I think, is really powerful. I think that is still really effective all this time later. Something that, with maybe the exception of minus one, at least of all the other Godzilla films I've seen, that message has never been completely captured the same way. And not only did it launch a 70-year or 69-year franchise at this point, it created the entire concept of suitimation, right? The whole acting with the rubber suits instead of doing the claymation monsters. And other than the first King Kong, and then I think it's what 20,000, the monster from like 20,000 Leagues, I think were the only two big monster movies before this. This is the third of its kind. It basically kicked off a genre. I give this a cinema, and not because I have no issues with it, but because it's such a foundational piece of film history, and I do think it encapsulates something really powerful that I just don't see much in anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you kinda gotta give it this is cinema just for, obviously what it's done for the film industry, what it's done, its reputation and legacy. And also, I mean, I do think this is still a good movie. Even with its limitations of the time, I still think what it has to say is still very relevant, especially with the doctor character, as we mentioned. And I think that's very good. And also, the just kind of the charming nature of it there. Oh, I say, okay, he charged up his bag even in this. Okay, so he still had that there where he does the atomic breath there. That's still glowing his spikes there. Um, so you still had that very much so, um, and I think for that, I mean, you really do have to kinda respect it and kinda give it a this is cinema for that, and like I said, launching now it's gonna be a 70-year franchise here, and this was one of the most expensive films Toho, had made at the time, and this was also made, the same year came out of Seven Samurai also came out the same year,
Mm.
1954 there, so this was kinda one of the 3 most kind of, expensive movies that they made at the time. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, very much appreciating going back in time and seeing this movie. Going back to take my time to go see this, and very much appreciate that it won the poll that we put up there. Definitely on a Godzilla kick right now. Going to try to watch some more of it since they're all on Max right now. You can check them out. I think the next one I'm going to watch is probably Shin Godzilla. It's probably the next one I'm going to definitely watch. Would you recommend anyone for the audience, for me, that you think people should check?
Anyone in particular? God, I wish I remembered the names of all of them better. But that one that you just showed a clip of, where he's doing the jump fly kick and kicking Megalon in the chest, that is. It might not be dramatic, or you might not learn anything from it, but I do think that movie is genuinely hilarious, especially if you can find the Mystery Science Theater version of it.
Yeah, it says Godzilla versus Megalon. Is that it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very much appreciated there. If people can watch that there. So yeah. So two. This is cinemas for Godzilla 1954.